Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and it's an honor to be here with you today. Now, today I want to make a video which explores Jupiter, this Jupiter-Mars conjunction. We are now just beginning to see the major application of. Mars is applying to Jupiter very strongly now. And we will have a massive T-square on around the same time that this conjunction actually happens. A T-square is when two planets are opposite each other, and each of those two planets make a tip of a triangle and create a square from each of those planets, like a triangle, right, to another planet or cluster of planets, right? So Venus and Saturn will be opposite each other, and both of them will make a square to Jupiter and Mars and Gemini. So the middle of August, a lot of astrologers have been predicting that we're going to see the most turbulence. We're going to see a lot of tension and challenge there. But the thing with T-squares is they're a different type of challenge. It is a transformational challenge. It is something that kind of has a point of tension, but then that release is so potent and revealing that usually we get catapulted into some new dimension of insight, or maybe something just kind of happens, right? Now, this video isn't about the T-square, but it's worth mentioning when it comes to the Jupiter-Mars conjunction, which on the world stage we are seeing play out in many, many ways. Now, in your own life, of course, you must know the Gemini part of your life when it comes to the Jupiter-Mars conjunction. When it comes to the T-square, I guess knowing where Pisces and Virgo are pretty activated in your life. Saturn has been pretty activated in all of our Pisces place, wherever Pisces is in your chart. And because Pisces takes, relatively long time to transit through, that undertone of Saturn usually is just like a little thorn in our side for the entire transit that it is, the entire time it occurs in whatever zodiac sign. And Saturn usually slows things down for us to gain some mastery in that part of our life. So I don't necessarily look at Saturn transits as something negative. I mean, there could be something amazing happening in your life in a particular house topic, and then here comes Saturn slowing things down. But really, that slowing down is almost like is forcing you to take a moment for a year or two, right, to really assess what that part of your life is all about and what's going on there. And usually when you follow Saturn's orders, you are gaining more maturity and mastery in whatever part of that life is for you, right? So, and then when that Saturn transit leaves, we are usually either faced with more insight into that part of our life that has helped us, or maybe you've struggled and stiff-armed the lessons in which it just is going to take a little bit more time to maybe heal or figure out some issues and problems there, So it can go either way, like all astrology. It goes either way, depending on your karma and your mindset and how efficient you operate psychologically, And we all have more to learn in this life. But the T-square, again, will kind of give us a point of tension in the Virgo, the Pisces, and the Gemini part of our life. But at the same time, like a perfect trifecta, things will all sort of become clearer in those parts of our life too, immediately after those transits move a little bit forward. And that really concerns Venus moving forward right after that T-square. And then, of course, Mars will pass Jupiter, and that conjunction will be dissolving rather quickly. But I've decided recently that, while trying to come up with new ideas for videos, because of course there's a lot of educational things I would like to talk about here. I know I have a tendency to ramble, and sometimes I even think, should I make this channel a podcast instead of just doing like regular videos? Because I feel like I can just sit down and talk for like a half hour, 40 minutes. And my rambling kind of makes me feel like, hey, I feel like I'm just sort of podcasting, but like in a very short form way. But as an astrologer and a teacher, I feel I'm still in this weird again, because I'm so new to YouTube and teaching, quite frankly, I'm still navigating like my style, how I want to approach the world and you guys. And there's so much about astrology I love. And when it comes to even the world and what's going on in the world, I feel very called at times to talk about that, because the astrology is so reflective of what's going on in the world. And there are periods in history where so many very, very big, profound things happen, where the astrology just becomes more and more accurate. And it is almost like a duty sometimes, I think, for myself to say, hey, like, if I can even bring astrology into the conversation while talking about the election, for example, or talking about maybe conflicts going on in parts of the world that are very big and maybe have not happened in centuries or decades, rather, generations, conflicts that are so, life-altering for so many very, very powerful governments and stuff like that. I feel if I can talk about some of that stuff sometimes, then maybe it will inspire people to look a little bit more deeply into astrology. So today, I want to touch on the relevance of the Jupiter-Mars conjunction in regard to how this is equating and revealing protest. Now, when Jupiter and Uranus had their massive conjunction in Taurus, we saw the rise of the protests regarding Israel and Gaza. And that defining moment, because that was a historical transit, I took that as a moment saying, okay, well, the more we track Jupiter moving forward, we're going to track Jupiter as a planet of the ideal, of the ideology of whatever decides to manifest through that. So Jupiter is always known as the planet of Sagittarius, the planet of culture, the planet of religion and spirituality and beliefs, right? So we all have beliefs. Countries have beliefs. Political parties have beliefs. Religions have beliefs. People who are part of a culture and a country have a belief. When one belief is challenged, there's usually an opposing force trying to fight. And the rise of the protests around the country, my country, with the college protests, for example, happened during a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And Uranus is the great disruptor, the great cataclysmic shifter of reality. And sometimes when those trigger points get planted in the ground, we can therefore say, okay, well, from this point forward, maybe we can track Jupiter in one of its many multidimensional meanings and significations in the world as a planet that could create uprise, protest, depending on what planet touches it. I've been anticipating that when Mars got to Jupiter, that we were going to see a rise in not only protest, but violent protest. And all we've been seeing in the last week is stuff in Venezuela. If you've been tracking with the news, we've been seeing a lot of aggression with a president there who won't concede to an obvious other winner. We're seeing in Bangladesh recently, like literally a couple of days ago, we're seeing how they were going crazy there. Violent protests that ousted their prime minister. We have been seeing in England, which I know some of you are in England, and maybe you can comment further on this, because I don't know all the details, but I do know that there was a horrific killing of 3 children. And there was a potential, correct me if I'm wrong, UK people, there was a misinformation wave of who killed these children. And because of the profile of the individual potentially who killed the 3 children was of an ethnicity that was not of, British descent, and a part of the more immigration issues that England has been having. I know maybe correct me if I'm wrong again, but was this part of the Muslim immigration problem that a lot of people in Europe are concerned about? And I'm casting no opinion on that. I'm just saying I know from being intelligent enough to read the news that there is a lot of concern for a lot of Europeans involving the immigration of Muslim cultured people. And I know part of this protest and uprise and violence in the UK is coming from anti-immigration movements, right? So we're dealing with Mars applying to Jupiter, triggering a violent protest and opposition regarding something involving a culture, a religion, a particular people. Mars being the god of war and violence. You know, in this particular case, especially with this conjunction, we are seeing violence in real time regarding protests. And we're also dealing with Gemini in the case of UK. I mean, this couldn't be a more perfect astrological alignment. And us astrologers call these moments, even if they are bad moments and sad and tragic moments or just horrific moments, you know, we call this astrologer good because it just further sometimes supports our claim that astrology is real, right? So whenever something happens that you're like, holy shit, the astrology lined up, even if it's bad, we still go, yeah, that was astrologer good though, because it's proving astrology is right. And astrologers have been trying to prove this shit forever. So, and Gemini being the misinformation wave of, you know, the planet of communication. But Gemini is not just communication. It is fast moving, superficial, chaotic communication. You know, it is quick. It is, I mean, if there was a zodiac sign for misinformation to fall in, it would be Gemini. So we've been seeing that happen in the UK with this conjunction. And then, of course, we've had the recent killing of a Hamas leader, which is triggering now Iran and Hezbollah and other people around Israel to threaten massive escalation of war. So we're dealing with Jupiter now, dealing with cultures, religion. We're dealing with ideologies. We're dealing with a history that involves land and territory and again, culture, belief systems. And Mars is violence, the escalation of war. Jupiter also expands everything because Jupiter is the guru, you know, in a religious spiritual sense, like throwing culture and war stuff aside. Jupiter is supposed to expand our consciousness into higher ideals. That's why Jupiter rules Sagittarius, philosophy, religion, higher ideals and questions of the nature of reality. So whenever we talk about Jupiter, we're talking about expanding anything it touches. So we're expanding violence, we're expanding the escalation of war. And in Gemini, we're expanding the rhetoric and the threats, verbal threats, okay? And even in the political world, we're seeing this now with the escalation of Democrat versus Republican stuff. We have the most vile verbal arguments and attacks happening now in the political moment between Trump and Kamala Harris, and now the vice presidents are in the mix and there's a battle of them and the games are on, right? Jupiter will be expanding the violent rhetoric in Gemini. I don't want to say there's going to be any violent stuff happening within the US moment, but we can't ignore it. We're not seeing protests in America just yet with the political stuff, but I believe down the line, we're definitely going to see that regarding the election for sure. But then there will be a whole other batch of transits that kind of, you know, explain that. But this T-square, you know, we have to be careful that there might not be some sort of massive moment regarding what I just said about protest and violence and the expansion of stuff. But, you know, and we have Venus going opposite Saturn. And I've been tracking Venus to be Kamala in the sky, you know, because if you track Kamala's journey through Leo, the rise to power in a feminine role, right? Venus is the feminine. And then tracking her through her birth chart, because I've been really exploring and studying her birth chart. Venus will be tracking in so many positions throughout the sky for months to come that you can almost, with razor sharp accuracy, see exactly what's going to happen and when for her. So if there's any moment for any sort of icky stickiness for her to come, it will be right before the DNC, which is August 19th. And this T-square will be happening before that, just a couple of days before that. So we might have some kind of bombshell moment regarding the Jupiter-Mars conjunction around August 15th, August 14th, 15th, 16th. and then leading up to the DNC, which we will then have a full moon in Aquarius, which, again, I'm not going to talk about politics in this video, but there's a lot of synchronicity and things lining up that I could talk all day here on, and pretty much I could pretty much walk you through every single moment of what's going to happen in the election and into next year. But this video is really just about the Jupiter-Mars conjunction, guys, okay? I just wanted to come on and talk about the reality of what Mars can do when touched with a planet that was so heavily activated by an outer planet, which is a generational planet. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are generational planets, which means they move so slow. And because they move so slow through a zodiac sign, they're usually providing us as individuals and the collective as a whole a massive transformation and lesson there, karmically speaking. And at the end of every transit, we're supposed to reflect on something that we've been through. I don't care if it's a day or a month or a year. We learn lessons every moment of our life, and it's up to us to come to these moments in our life and either produce more karma that could be more challenging. We have the opportunity to continue to buck reality, or we can learn to surrender and accept things in reality. And of course, take action in a more supportive and positive way, which is how you dissolve bad karma and kind of, make life more light, in a very, light, L-I-G-H-T. And then we can live easier, right? The less karma we carry, the less that we burden ourselves with and hold on to, the more we can relax in life, and surrender. So because we have these generational planets that teach us these massive lessons, when you have a planet like Jupiter, that's also slow moving, but transits every 12 years around the zodiac, but it will, which means it will touch all of these generational planets in different positions in the sky throughout its 12 years. And the thing, though, is where it touches those generational planets in their moment in their transits can make all the difference of making something historic or not. Uranus being at that 20-something degree that it was when Jupiter touched it, that was a very significant degree in the sky for Uranus. And we were very close to that planet, that star, the Death Star, the demon star Algol at the time as well. So we were already Uranus is already in a position to be causing anything that goes across that degree point to have more of a negative connotation, a more violent connotation, a more, and again, a violent and protest uprise or anything sudden, right? I even think we had an earthquake in Jersey around the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I'm pretty sure. There was a massive earthquake in New York, New Jersey. It wasn't massive, but it was big enough where my entire room here in New Jersey was shaking. And that was a moment for a seismic shift. It was just a little wake-up call, a Jupiterian kind of moment. Just an expansive moment of something that doesn't really happen to a particular part of, my area of the world. And it could have been very catastrophic and deadly, if it was bad enough. But that was a historic moment for Jupiter to kind of just put a little imprint in time to say, okay, well, now Jupiter, through the course of the near future, and I don't know for how long, this is what's important about astrology. We don't know how long Jupiter will be influencing protest and uprise and potentially war now, but it's in the zeitgeist. It is imprinted into the reality of what can come, which is why every time a personal planet will touch Jupiter and maybe even some of the bigger planets now, we can potentially see protest get activated because we are in a time and a generation of war. And let's not get it twisted. We are in many wars around the world. There's even more threats of World War III and stuff like that. If anything happens around Israel that is catastrophic in a bad way, no matter who it is, we're going to have a massive escalation of war all over the place. Even the United States will get involved. We still have Russia doing what they're doing to Ukraine. And I don't care what your thoughts are on that, but the fact of the matter is that was the biggest attempt at a Western land grab since World War II. These are massive things going on. And Jupiter is front and center. That got triggered with Uranus to provide this karma to come potentially now. So if you look closely enough at what's going on in the world and you track and map what's going on in the sky, you will see these patterns arise. And typically speaking, when things are in the media, that's usually when we hear the planet speaking to us the loudest. Like the UK riots, right? And what's going on in the UK. Like Venezuela. I mean, what are the chances of Venezuela, Bangladesh, UK, and what was the other one? And the escalation of war in Israel and around that whole region happen all within the same week, right? Just as Mars is applying to Jupiter, we've all been saying this. We've all been saying this, and having a political moment in the United States where vulgarity and the threats of democracy, these horrific, crazy words to hear, that can totally cripple a nation and everything they stand for, right? Whether it's true or not, that's just what's happening. It's being said, Gemini. And we have beliefs, culture, politics, religious ideas clashing with the god of war. And this is what's happening. And we have to keep a close eye on this T-square, like I started the video off, guys, because again, something very major may happen, regarding something going on with Saturn and Venus in the sky as well. Because Saturn and Venus will be opposite each other, which again, because I've been tracking Kamala as Venus, I think if we want to really pay attention, keep track of what goes on with her campaign trail for the next 2 weeks, right? Before the DNC. Let's see if anything that goes on with Jupiter Mars, like I've been saying, some of the vulgar stuff, and I don't want to say the V word, violence, but like let's keep things into perspective there. Let's analyze it as astrologers here, right? And see what occurs. And let's see what manifests. Let's see what the news talks about. And because when we talk about these massive transits, we should keep an eye on the media, especially with Gemini. And if you want to even further your claims that astrology is real, track with me. Keep up to date on this stuff. All right, my friends. Well, that's all I have for you. I may talk more about what's going on in the world. I've been hesitant to do it here because I know I'm trying to, my number one passion is helping people one-on-one and consultations and readings. I mean, my background in psychology and, counseling people and just my deep interest in helping others is my number one. But as an astrologer, it is my job as well to really understand what's happening in the world. So if things do really go bad, that I could also maybe be a voice of reason to show you like, hey, for some reason, the karma of the world, this was sort of predetermined and this is bound to happen. And we can all do our due diligence in reacting to this in a more aligned spiritual way versus a very human, chaotic way, even though we must keep our humanness and be human and be there for others in a human way. But at the deepest core of your spiritual outlook, being stoic and supportive and loving, knowing that, yes, this was meant to be unfolding, but the higher purpose of it all is something I won't be able to understand, but to know that this is part of the story and that accepting that story is really the ultimate answer to the question. All right, my friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That would really help the algorithm of the channel. And yeah, that's all for today. Much love.